Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am the Darklight Emissary, and today's episode is continuing our discussions on the Legion tactics and battle doctrines for each Legion. And this episode is on the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves, or as they are known later, the Sons of Horus Legion. Now, the Sons of Horus, or Luna Wolves as they were earlier called during the Great Crusade, are one of the most prominent legions during the Great Crusade for some obvious reasons if you are at all familiar with the overall lore of that era. And their doctrines for battle tend to be actually quite run-of-the-mill compared to many of the other legions at a glance. They use tactical squads of Space Marines. They tend to use a wide variety of different weapons. They have armored units. They have pretty much everything a Legion you would expect to have. And a lot of what makes the Sons of Horus stand out isn't their exact equipment, but more so their philosophies on battle and the style at which they conducted it. The Luna Wolves were set up in a hierarchy going from the Primarch to captains down to sergeants and then squads. And the squads were made up of mostly tactical squads of Space Marines that diversified to different specializations that were called upon in different campaigns for different varying reasons. They had destroyer squads that were sent into punitively destroy areas. They had Reaver squadrons. They had squadrons of jump pack Marines seemed to be favored in this legion, having a place in the first company of Space Marines alongside Abaddon and the Justaeran squads of the first company of this legion. And also prominent within this legion was a favor and use of Terminator armor, which is most noticeable on Horus himself. Out of all the Primarchs, I can't think of one other one that used Terminator armor. It's kind of a distinct quality of Horus to have a personal suit of Terminator armor built directly for him by the Forges of Mars. And just like him, and just like their Primarch, many of his first company Marines in the Justaeran squads, as well as the Reaver squads, also chose to wear Terminator armor, and did so up into our modern era of 40k. I think the Black Legion has probably quite a few Terminator suits of armor amongst many of the legions that are traitors. They probably have some of the most still in service. Due to the favor that this legion tended to have with the Emperor as well as the Mechanicum, they were some of the most willing to try out new technologies. They tested some of the newest sets of Terminator armor as well as just tactical power armor in general among Space Marines. This legion had many types of armors that you can see in some art. There is, I believe on the Horus Rising art cover, some somewhat odd-looking armor sets in that art piece. And if you look closely at it, some of it doesn't seem to exist. And that's because some of the armor sets that the Sons of Horus were using were only prototyped and then never made it out to mass production to the rest of the legions. And exclusively to this legion, then there is some uniqueness to some of the armor, especially during the Great Crusade. The command structure of the Sons of Horus, or Luna Wolves, was a pretty rigid structure. There wasn't too much of regular Marines talking up to or as equals to captains. If you were a captain in the Sons of Horus, you were of a higher status, recognizably so, due to your combat prowess along with your strategic acumen compared to your lesser brothers. Individuals like Abaddon and members of the Mournival, which was a unique group of 4 captains that were always advisors to the Primarch and were the only ones that were basically given the permission to speak their mind to the Primarch without any kind of formality. Otherwise, there was definitely a subservience and respect shown to individuals like Abaddon, especially, with, I think, some punishments due if you disrespected someone of a higher rank than your own. Overall, the attitude within this legion was one of a professional army. You might say that that's the case for most Space Marine legions, but it was kind of an extreme case with the Sons of Horus. Despite this legion coming from a somewhat lawless world and the Marines being recruited from lawless gangs on that world, they tended to be a very professional legion with a sense of elitism going all the way down to the lowest member of the legion. There was a certain pride to every Marine in this legion, and that pride carried this legion forward to many victories, just as much as their mechanical acumen in war was. Just their abilities as Space Marines carried them. Their attitude did as well. Combined with this attitude of elitism and pride as a legion, they mixed with that a very powerful tactic meant to overwhelm any enemy target. They called it the spear tip, and they would take several companies worth of Marines, so imagine about 3,000 or 4,000 Marines, and they would charge directly at a identified command structure or command squad of enemy forces and try to decapitate the leadership of the enemy as quickly as possible. And then the rest of the legion would sweep up the rest of the now less organized enemy forces. Now, despite the pride that this legion had, their sense of elitism, and them having a very solid main tactic that they used, this legion was surprisingly adaptable to new tactics and adapting other tactics to themselves. It's what helped them become such a superlative force compared to some of their brother legions that overly specialize in a certain tactic or were known for that. That sort of blunted some legions' either progress in compliances or speed at which they did it. Different weaknesses tended to come about, or drawbacks, due to a hyper-focus of a certain doctrine. Now, the Sons of Horus, their downfall kind of was their pride and their elitism in the end, but this served them greatly during the Great Crusade. They seem to have some of the most compliance actions due to their tactical acumen and their ability to adapt to a situation, their ability to observe other legions and take some of those tactics into their legion were some of the things that they were willing to do that allowed them to then apply those to given situations. The pride did not extend to, we have to do tactics a certain way. They were very willing to adapt their overall combat doctrine in a theater of war to defeat their enemy, instead of try to do something that they always did. It's one of the main reasons this legion was so successful. Also, one of the initial great strengths of this legion was that pretty much every Marine in this legion had a devout, undying loyalty to their Primarch. Despite each Primarch taking command of their legions, not every Primarch was beloved. However, Horus was basically loved to a great degree by his men. Abaddon first amongst those, but pretty much every man had a great undying loyalty to their Primarch and wanted to serve him in combat to a great degree. Before their failing to the Emperor, they did not want to fail to their Primarch. And very few Marines, if you were to ask them, would say their devotion was to the Emperor first, before to the Lupercal himself. And this was a great boon in combat for the most part. They drew inspiration from their Primarch, and even though that combined with their pride eventually led to this legion's downfall, during the main part of the Great Crusade, this is what carried this legion to many undefeated victories amongst the Great Crusade legions of the day. At their height, this legion was numbering in between 110,000 to 170,000 Marines, possibly up to over 200,000. Exact numbers are not exactly recorded for this legion, but they did have quite the robust force to engage most compliance actions with. They also augmented their forces with many supporting Imperial Army forces, and as well as Titan legions. Most notorious of which was the Legio Mortis Legion, and then most prominently amongst that legion, the Dies Irae, which was an Imperator class Titan that usually led an assault with the Sons of Horus main first company, along with many of the other elite forces of this legion, including the Primarch himself at times. This legion didn't seem to overly rely upon armor columns or tanks or anything like that nearly as much. However, along with the philosophy of overwhelming force that this legion tended to employ in decapitating enemies, this extended to their fleet in orbit as well. This fleet was the biggest of any of the legions, pretty much, other than perhaps the word bearers we mentioned before. They had the Vengeful Spirit, Gloriana-class battleship, and many supporting grand ships in the War Master's fleet. Most distinctly probably because he became the War Master, but this legion tended to have more ships than was the norm for any of the legions at the time. And this could partially be the case as well that this legion had really good ties with the main Mechanicum on Mars that threw in with them during the Horus Heresy. It would make sense that Mechanicum might want to build more ships for a legion they had more faith in and saw as more of an ally compared to perhaps some of the others. All of these aspects combined to make the Sons of Horus one of the most formidable fighting forces during the Horus Heresy and Great Crusade era. And despite all of these aspects that built them up, by the time that Horus was slain during the Horus Heresy, the ego and pride that drove them ultimately became their downfall and shattered them into a nearly irreparable force until they reconstituted during the 40k era back into the Black Legion. This has been a brief overview of the Sons of Horus Legion, their battle tactics and doctrines, and as always, please leave a like or subscribe if you'd like to see more of this content. Leave a comment if you'd like to discuss anything with me. I do enjoy doing that with each of you that leave a comment. Thanks for doing that so far, and thanks for joining up and being part of this community. It's a small but growing one, and I appreciate all the time any of you spend with any of my videos. I love being able to share some of what I know about this setting with each of you and learn what you have to say to me about things. We have a Discord that we are in that we like to discuss different 40k subjects with, along with just anything else as a general community. I will be putting a link in this video description if you would like to join us on that Discord. That link should be active for about a week from the time that this video goes live. As always, please bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next video. We have the next Legion up, which is my personal favorite, the Thousand Suns Legion. I'm going to enjoy talking about them next time. And for now, I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks, and have a great day or night wherever you are.